Let me describe a moment you've never seen in a habit video. It's a Tuesday. Your alarm goes off at 6 a.m. The alarm you set 3 weeks ago when you decided this time would be different. You hear it. You're awake. And you don't get up. Not because you decided to quit. Not because something dramatic happened. You just don't. You lie there for 8 seconds, maybe 12, and in that silence your brain runs a calculation you're not even conscious of. And the answer comes back. Not today. You turn off the alarm. You don't feel guilty yet. That comes later, around 2 p.m., like a slow leak you can't find the source of. By Thursday, you've stopped setting the alarm entirely. By the following Tuesday, you've moved the yoga mat back into the closet. There was no moment of failure. There was no crisis. The habit just stopped having a pulse. And you have no idea why. Every habit book, every YouTube video, every productivity account with a ring light and a whiteboard has an explanation for this. You didn't have a strong enough why. You didn't stack it onto an existing habit. You didn't make it small enough. You didn't track your streak. And maybe, for some people some of the time, they're right. But here's what none of them address. What if the habit was dead before you ever attempted it? What if the failure didn't happen on that Tuesday morning? What if it happened the night before, or 3 hours before, or 3 years before, in the way you built the invisible architecture of your daily decisions? The habit that sent me down this rabbit hole wasn't the gym. It was flossing. I'm serious. I tried to build a flossing habit 11 times over 4 years. 11. I had the floss sitting right there on the counter next to the toothbrush. I had the phone reminder. I did the attach it to brushing your teeth thing from every habit book ever printed. And every single time, it lasted between 12 and 23 days. Then it just evaporated. I remember standing in my bathroom one night staring at the floss I hadn't touched in 9 days, and the thought that arrived was, if I can't even make myself drag a string between my teeth for 90 seconds a day, what does that say about me as a person? That question, that specific, humiliating question, is what launched 2 years of looking into this. Because the answer turned out to be nothing. It says nothing about you as a person. It says everything about the invisible architecture underneath. I spent those 2 years studying not why habits work. There are 1,000 videos on that, but why they die. And the pattern is disturbingly consistent. Habits don't fail at the point of execution. They fail in 3 invisible layers underneath. Layers nobody examines because they don't look like habit problems. They look like personality flaws. They look like I'm just lazy. They look like maybe I'm not the kind of person who sticks with things. They're not. They're architectural. And architectural problems have architectural solutions. This is the autopsy nobody ordered. 3 causes of death. None of them are willpower. None of them are motivation. And once you see them, you'll understand why every habit you've ever abandoned was probably doomed before you set the alarm. Here's something that should bother you about the habit industry. James Clear, B.J. Fogg, Charles Duhigg. Smart people, useful books. But notice what all of them zero in on. The moment of the habit. The cue. The craving. The response. The reward. The tiny version. The stack. The environment tweak. Every single framework assumes you arrive at the moment of the habit with a fully functional brain ready to execute. That assumption, that single untested invisible assumption, is where everything falls apart. Because most of the time, you don't arrive at the habit with a functional brain. You arrive depleted. You arrive with your identity fighting the behavior. You arrive inside a schedule that's been quietly working against you since you opened your eyes. The habit never got a fair trial. It was sentenced before it walked into the courtroom. Think about the last habit you dropped, not what the failure looked like. Forget the skipped day, the broken streak. Think about what the hours before looked like. The evening before, were you making dozens of small decisions about dinner, emails, what to watch, whether to respond to that text, what to lay out for tomorrow? That morning, did you wake up already behind, already reactive, already burning mental currency on things that had nothing to do with the habit? Almost certainly yes, because that's what a normal day looks like. And a normal day is a hostile environment for new habits. Not because of what's in it, but because of what it takes out of you before the habit even gets its turn. What I'm about to walk through are the three conditions that sit underneath the habit, in the hours, decisions, and identity structures that determine whether your brain will cooperate when the moment arrives. I call them pre-habits. Not because they're habits you do first, but because they're the conditions that have to be intact for any habit to survive past day 19. Fix these three conditions, and habits that failed 10 times suddenly stick without extra willpower. Leave them broken, and the most perfectly designed habit system collapses. Not because the system was bad, but because the foundation it was sitting on never existed. Let me walk you through last night. You got home from work. Or you closed the laptop. Same difference. Between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m., 4 hours, how many decisions did you make? Not big decisions. Micro decisions. What to eat. Whether to cook or order. What to order. From which app. That thing where you open Uber Eats, scroll for 6 minutes, close it, open DoorDash, scroll the same restaurants, then decide to just make pasta. That's 4 decisions wearing a trench coat pretending to be one. What to watch. Whether to reply to that message now or tomorrow. Whether to start that task or push it. What to wear in the morning. Whether to go to bed now or in 20 minutes. Which, let's be honest, always means 45. Each one seems like nothing. Each one costs almost nothing. But Roy Baumeister's research at Florida State showed something that should make anyone building habits deeply uncomfortable. Decision-making and self-regulation draw from the same cognitive pool. Every micro-decision you make in the evening quietly drains the exact resource your morning habit needs to fire. By the time your 6 a.m. alarm goes off, the tank isn't low. It's been running on fumes since about 9 p.m. The average adult makes roughly 35-hour decisions per day. Most are invisible. You don't experience them as decisions. But your prefrontal cortex processes every single one. And by evening, decision quality tanks. This is why judges grant more paroles right after lunch than right before. Why Mark Zuckerberg wore the same gray t-shirt for years. Why you can say no to the leftover cake at 10 a.m. and then eat 3 slices standing in the kitchen at 10:47 p.m. Fridge door still open, cold light on your face, not even tasting it. Just chewing because your brain quit making good calls 2 hours ago. You know that posture? One leg tucked under you on the couch, head tilted, scrolling Netflix for 14 minutes without picking anything, thumb moving but eyes glazed? That's not relaxation. That's your prefrontal cortex on empty, trying to make one more decision with nothing left in the account. And every one of those moments is silently borrowing from tomorrow's 6 a.m. Your habit isn't competing against laziness in the morning. It's competing against the 200 micro-decisions you made between dinner and bedtime that nobody, not one habit book, told you to manage. The fix isn't more discipline. It's decision architecture. Specifically, eliminating discretionary decisions in the 3 hours before sleep. Not reducing. Eliminating. The same dinner every weeknight, or 3 rotating options you never have to deliberate between. Clothes selected the night before, always. The same shutdown sequence. Dishes, bag packed, phone charging in another room, lights off, no choosing, no browsing, no "what should I?" The goal isn't rigidity. The goal is to arrive at 6 a.m. with a full tank instead of a dry one. You're not building discipline. You're protecting a resource that's been bleeding out every evening while you thought you were just unwinding. This first layer has nothing to do with the habit itself. It's about the 200 invisible decisions that happen before it. Control the evening, and the morning stops fighting you. All right, so you fix the decision drain. Your tank is full at 6 a.m. But there's a second layer that can kill the habit even with a full tank. And this one hides better. Have you ever done a habit perfectly for 2 weeks and felt like a fraud the whole time? You're at the gym, doing the workout, doing it correctly, and there's this voice running underneath everything. This isn't you. You're playing a part. You'll stop. That voice isn't weakness. It's not self-sabotage in the way people usually mean it. It's your identity's immune system doing exactly what it was built to do, rejecting a foreign behavior that doesn't match the host. Your brain carries a self-concept, a running model of who you are, that it updates extremely slowly and guards aggressively. This model is assembled from years of stacked evidence. What you've done, what you've failed at, how you've described yourself to friends, what other people's reactions have reflected back. When you install a habit that contradicts this model, I'm going to exercise every morning, layered on top of a self-concept that reads, I'm someone who starts things and quits by week 3. Your brain doesn't register a goal. It registers a contradiction. And the brain resolves contradictions in favor of the existing model nearly every time. Not because it hates growth, because rewriting the self-concept is metabolically expensive and, from an evolutionary standpoint, dangerous. Your brain would literally rather keep an outdated operating manual than spend the energy to patch it. This is why just start small doesn't always land the way it should. A tiny habit, 1 push-up, 1 page, 60 seconds of meditation, is small enough that it slips past the identity immune response. Fine, but it's also too small to update the identity. You do 1 push-up and your brain files it under anomaly, not evidence. You need the habit to be small enough to execute but meaningful enough that the self-concept actually registers it. And the way to get there isn't making the habit bigger. It's changing what you tell yourself about it before you begin. Before installing any habit, spend 5 minutes on what I call an identity audit. Write down, in 1 sentence, who you honestly believe you are in relation to this behavior. No spin. I'm someone who talks about going to the gym but doesn't go. I'm someone who buys journals and never fills them past page 4. Whatever comes out, that's the immune system you're going to be fighting. Now write the smallest true update. Not, I'm a gym person now. Your brain will reject that before the ink dries. But, I'm someone who went to the gym once this week. That's a fact. Your brain can't argue with a fact. 1 fact per week, stacked quietly until the self-concept rewrites itself. Not because you forced it, but because the evidence got too heavy to ignore. The habit isn't the end goal. The identity update is. The habit is just the delivery vehicle for the evidence. 2 layers down. 1 to go. And this last one is the reason switching methods never solved anything. Design your environment. You've heard it so many times the words have lost all texture. Put the running shoes by the door. Keep the guitar on its stand, not in the case. Put the fruit on the counter. Hide the chips in the cabinet. Good advice, real science behind it. And it covers about 15% of what environment actually means. When researchers at the University of Southern California tracked how habits actually formed in daily life, not in labs, not in surveys, in real behavior over months, they found that physical cues predicted habit sticking in only a narrow set of conditions. You know what predicted it 6 times more reliably? 2 things that almost never show up in habit content: who you spend your week around, and what time of day you attempt the habit relative to everything else on your plate. The social piece isn't get an accountability partner. It runs deeper than that, and it's more uncomfortable. Your friend group operates on an unspoken behavioral thermostat, a range of behaviors that count as normal within the circle. Try exercising 3 times a week when nobody in your social orbit exercises. You won't feel direct pressure to stop. You'll feel something subtler. You just won't feel like going. The resistance puts on the costume of personal preference. But if you track it honestly, the days you skip most often line up not with your energy, but with your social calendar. The evenings you spent around people who don't share the behavior are the mornings the habit dies. Not because anyone discouraged you. Because social belonging and behavioral consistency are neurologically linked. And when forced to choose, your brain will sacrifice the new habit to protect the belonging. Every single time. The timing piece is even more invisible. When you schedule a habit matters as much as whether you schedule it. Most people drop new habits into early morning or late evening because those slots feel open. But those are the exact hours when decision fatigue is worst. Evening, or sleep inertia, is heaviest. Early morning. Research on chronobiology and habit formation points to a different window. The first transition point of your day. The 20-minute gap between one obligation ending and the next one starting. For most people, that's the commute home, the lunch break, or the window between shutting the laptop and starting dinner. Transition gaps have two properties that make them unusually friendly for new behaviors. Cognitive resources are still partially charged, and the brain is already in mode-switching mode, which makes it more open to a new behavioral insertion. Putting a habit in a transition window instead of a cold start 5 a.m. slot doesn't require more motivation. It just means the habit lands in the one window where your brain is already primed for something different. Now step back and look at what you have. 3 pre-habit conditions. 3 invisible layers that were cracked every time you tried to build a habit. And you blamed yourself for every collapse. The decision fatigue trap. Your evening micro-decisions drained the exact resource your morning habit needed. You weren't lazy. You were depleted before the alarm ever rang. Identity lag. Your self-concept was rejecting the behavior the way an immune system attacks a transplant. You weren't weak-willed. You were mismatched. The environment lie. Your physical space was optimized, but your social circle and your schedule were working against you in dimensions you couldn't even see. You weren't failing at habits. You were succeeding at surviving inside a system that was architecturally hostile to change. Think about launching a rocket. The actual launch, engines firing, the thing rising off the pad. That's the habit. That's the part everyone films. But 94% of the mission planning happens before ignition. Fuel calculations, weather checks, trajectory programming, structural integrity tests. If any of those pre-launch conditions fail, the engine power is irrelevant. The rocket doesn't clear the tower. Your habits work the same way. Every book taught you to build bigger engines, better methods, more willpower, stronger motivation. Nobody taught you to check the pre-launch conditions. So you kept building rockets that blew up on the pad and concluded, "I'm bad at rockets." You're not bad at rockets. You never checked the weather. I'm not going to recap. You know the 3 layers. What you need now is the tool. Here's a 3-minute diagnostic you run before your next habit attempt. Not after it fails. Before it starts. 3 minutes. 3 questions. 1 per layer. Minute 1. The decision audit. Look at the 3 hours before the habit is supposed to happen. How many discretionary decisions live in that window? Count them. Every "what should I" is a leak. Your target? 0. Pre-decide everything. Script the window. If the habit fires at 6 a.m., your 9 to 11 p.m. needs to run on rails. If you count more than 5 open decisions in the pre-habit window, the habit is already on life support before day 1. Minute 2. The identity check. Complete this sentence without editing yourself. I am someone who, in relation to the habit. If what comes out is a contradiction. I'm someone who always quits. I'm someone who means well but never follows through. You've just located the immune response that will kill this by week 3. Before starting the habit, Create one piece of undeniable evidence per week that nudges that sentence somewhere new. Not the full habit, something smaller. Something your brain can't dismiss as a fluke. Update the identity first. The habit follows. Minute 3. The environment scan. 2 questions. First, of the 5 people you spend the most time with, how many do this habit or something close to it? If the answer is 0 or 1, you're fighting social gravity solo. And you need to know that going in. Find one person, one community, one group where this behavior is the default. Even if it's online, even if it's strangers on a Discord server at 6 a.m. Second, when are you placing this habit? If it sits at a cold start moment, first thing in the morning or dead last at night, move it to a transition window. Between obligations, where your brain is already shifting gears. One scheduling change can be the difference between day 12 and month 12. The habit industry sold you a clean story. Find the right method and stick to it. The truth is less cinematic. The method barely matters if the floor underneath it is cracked. Fix the floor, the decision architecture, the identity alignment, the social and temporal environment, and nearly any method works. Leave the floor broken, and the best system in the world collapses around day 19. You don't need a better habit system. You need a better pre-habit system. Now you have one. Stop building better habits on a broken floor. Fix the floor, the decisions, the identity, the environment, and the habits build themselves. Every system you've ever tried was good enough. The foundation wasn't. Now it can be. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 was the one you'd never considered. Decision fatigue, identity lag, or the environment lie. And which dead habit it explains. Don't say all 3. Pick one. The one that made you go, oh, that's why it failed. Name the layer and name the habit. That specificity is your first diagnostic, and a diagnostic is worth more than 100 motivational videos. Subscribe if you want more content that pulls apart the invisible systems underneath the advice everyone already knows.